Good morning and welcome to Breakfast Central. Thank you for starting your morning with us. We apologize for starting slightly behind schedule. But from here on, we are going through the stories quickly as possible, also giving an opportunity for you to be a part of the conversation when we open the phone lines. I am Olive Emodi.
And I am Osagie Ogbawa. Thank you very much for joining us and waking up with us this Tuesday morning. As always, for the next 2 hours, we have some of the major conversations happening here in Nigeria. We would like that, of course, you could also join us via our social media platforms at News Central TV. Now, before we get into, sharing with you what our top stories are and the news headlines, another, very sad incident occurred in Lagos yesterday, somewhere around mile 2. It was reported, that a container once again fell on a vehicle. Luckily, the passenger of that vehicle, the driver of that vehicle, came out alive, and reportedly without many bruises. But it once again, is adding to the long list of occurrences where this has happened here in Lagos State, mostly in Lagos. We don't get to hear about this in many other parts of Nigeria. But, here in Lagos, and it once again brought back those conversations really that Nigeria can happen to you at any time and in any place. And, we must continue to push for a society where, first of all, these types of, very, very shocking incidents do not happen. And then that, also a society that even when they happen, you can have the type of response that assures you that you will be rescued and you would make it out alive.
I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because that's another part. I don't know if we have the video to play, but that's another part that was a key, standout for me. That was something that stood out, to see that this video, when this collapse happened, the 40-feet container fell on this car, this alone car, and people were trying to lift up the tanker, the container with their hands. You could see Nigerians just running around trying to lift. How do you try to even lift up a 40-feet container with bare hands? It's the reason that they have emergency services. So when you look at our peculiarities here, it's the fact that, first of all, how quickly can emergency services get there? We also have a traffic situation where, before they would even navigate their way through the traffic, the person would probably have lost their lives. Yeah. So our emergency services, kudos to them for the work they're doing so far. But situations like this remind us that we're a far cry from where we ought to be. Yeah. So when we're complaining about the state of the roads, or we're complaining about the fact that our transportation system needs to be fixed, it's not just because people need to get to their destination on time. It's also because of situations like this when we have emergencies, so that emergency rescue services can get to the people that need them as urgently as they should.
Absolutely.
Another question is, why do we keep having this kind of vehicles plying our roads in the daytime, knowing that they could pose a challenge to a number of the smaller drivers? And what's even worse is how, if you see some of these vehicles, these containers, as they're called, the way that they drive, their drivers drive with reckless abandon. One hit me the other day, I think it was last week. I have a dent on my car, and it was one of them that hit me. So it's almost like the containers and the tippers, they're dragging the road with regular drivers, they're speeding, and you can see sometimes you are behind. I don't like to be behind them, so I'm way, way behind them, or I make sure that I overtake them, because you're seeing the container looking like it's dangling. And like you said, it can happen to anybody. 1 minute you wake up, you're driving to work, the next minute the person's underneath the container.
Yeah. So I don't even agree with the idea of, what time of day is best for them to
because
drive.
The traffic laws of Lagos State sort of specify the timing within which a number of these tippers and trailers should drive during, in Lagos metropolis.
But again, and I believe that they should have even challenged that. The reason that is, I believe that the reason behind those regulations were mostly because Lagos State itself has not been able to create a conducive transportation network and infrastructure that can accommodate the number of vehicles that we have. If we maybe had less vehicles on the road, and because more people plying, rail networks across Lagos, you maybe wouldn't have the level of traffic that you have in Lagos.
That's wishful thinking.
I'm just saying, so what we've done, and it's almost the same reaction that we have across Nigeria from government, knee-jerk reactions that aren't necessarily solving the actual problem, but they are shielded themselves from taking responsibility for failing to solve our problem. So they create laws to accommodate and, put a Band-Aid on that problem instead of actually, fixing it. If big heavy-duty vehicles decide that their business isn't to run during the day, they should be allowed to run. And the reason is the road and transportation infrastructure in Lagos and main parts of Nigeria makes it difficult for these vehicles to move conveniently and safely without affecting the lives and security of other people across the state. So there is that part that it's a different conversation entirely. But, yes, I agree with, the idea concerning rescue. I think I should give kudos. Nobody knows exactly how long it took for LASEMA and LASMA and, other state government agencies to get there and rescue this person, but he was eventually rescued. So we should give them kudos. But it doesn't take away the core problem, which is that Nigeria can happen to you at any time. That's one. And then two, do we genuinely believe that in every situation where this type of thing could happen, that you will get rescued? And the answer is no. We've seen this happen in building collapses here in Lagos and in other parts of the country. We've also seen it with, with regards, road accidents. And you made a very strong point that with the traffic situation in Lagos, you might have an emergency situation and nobody can reach you. I remember when the building collapse happened in Ikoyi, and I spoke with one of the heads of these agencies, and he gave a very shocking, he made a very shocking statement about the time that he took for their rescue emergency vehicles to leave where they were and get to Ikoyi. That was a couple of years ago, which was very revealing as to what, this very, very, problem. Now, another thing to mention is, so you've described a situation where these drivers, are reckless, with the way that they move their, 40-foot containers across the state. It's mostly because there is no regulation that is adhered to, and people who fail to adhere to those regulations are punished. That's why you would find these containers that are not properly secured to their vehicles moving around the city. If you've seen that there's a container that was moving and LASMA, FRSU, VIO stopped that vehicle and that person was jailed for 3 months, it would stop that, and you would not see a repeat of that, happening across Lagos. But we don't see that. And so, there's a possibility that once again, this would occur.
Well, so I think where we should get to is being more proactive as opposed to being reactive, and how we can reduce incidents like this from occurring. We will have a conversation about this maybe as a top story, but it's not our top story for today. Let's share with you what our top stories are. This morning on Breakfast Central, Nigeria's GDP growth rises by 3.46% in Q3 report. That's according to the National Bureau of Statistics. Might Premium tackles Bill Gates, Agric Ministry over GMO foods. And we're talking about what the implication of this will be. Federal government defends borrowing despite revenue gain. And away from that, Speaker Abbas leads anti-GBV walk, that's the gender-based violence walk, and submits petition to the Inspector General of Police. We review the newspaper front pages and we'll open the phone lines for you to join us as well. All these and more on Breakfast Central.
With security matters, where the air component of Operation Hadin Kai has dealt a significant blow to insurgents, destroying a terrorist food depot and eliminating several fighters during airstrikes in Jubillaram within the Tumbun area of the Lake Chad Basin. In a statement on Monday, the Director of Public Relations and Information for the Nigerian Air Force, Air Commodore Olushola Akimboyewa, disclosed that the operation was conducted on November 23rd following detailed intelligence gathering. The targeted location was identified as a critical food storage and a hideout for terrorist commandants and their fighters. And now to politics. Crusoe Osagie, the media aide to immediate past governor of Edo State, Godwin Obaseki, says the probe of his principal's administration is a smokescreen to cover the incompetence of the administration of Monday Okpebholo. Governor Okpebholo had constituted a 14-member asset verification committee to probe the administration of former Governor Godwin Obaseki, his predecessor. Now, members of the committee will be sworn in on Tuesday. Earlier, political analyst Ibrahim Momo shared his thoughts on this. And also the news, the Nigerian Labour Congress is holding firm on its December 1st deadline for implementing the new minimum wage nationwide. The body has reiterated that all states must implement the new minimum wage of 70,000 naira as mandated by the law signed by President Bola Tinubu in July 2024. Despite over 30 states complying, including Lagos and Kano, others like Zamfara, Sokoto, and Nasarawa have yet to meet the requirement. NLC spokesman Benson Upa confirmed that the union's directive stands, warning that workers will embark on an indefinite strike in non-compliant states after November 30. And President Bola Tinubu will inaugurate the 10th National Industrial Labor Relations Summit on Tuesday in Ilorin, Kwara State. Organized by the Michael Imodu National Institute of Labor Studies, the event aims to promote industrial harmony and economic growth. The Minister of State for Labor, Dr. Nkiruka Onyejocha, and Kwara State Governor Abdurrahman Abdurrazak will host stakeholders from across Nigeria's labor relations system. The event will feature key speakers including Budget Minister Atiku Bagudu and labor leaders Joseph Ajero and Festus Osifo. The Minister of Youth Development, Ayodele Olawande, has announced plans to send a memo to President Bola Tinubu mandating all government agencies and parastatals to accept corps members assigned to them for the mandatory National Youth Service Corps program. Speaking at a press conference in Abuja on Monday, the minister addressed concerns about corps member rejections, reaffirming the federal government's November 19th decision to lift restriction on posting corps members exclusively to the public sector. The revised policy now permits corps members to serve in private sector organizations, including banks and oil and gas companies. And also in the news, recognizing individuals who create meaningful impact across diverse fields is a vital part in celebrating their contributions and inspiring others to strive for excellence. Now, this comes as the Global Impact Awards, hosted by the Global Affairs Magazine Foundation, dedicated to honoring excellence in areas such as media and humanitarian work, recognizes distinguished individuals, including the Managing Director and Editor-in-Chief of New Central TV, Kayode Akintimi. The major highlight of the event was the presentation of a Lifetime Achievement Award in Media to Kayode Akintimi for his rich contribution to the media industry.
Kayode Akintimi has been in this game for a long time. He interviewed me the first time in 1989.
It's an incredible honor to receive this award on behalf of Mr. Kayode Akintimi. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. Thank you so much for including us. And we hope to see more of you. Thank you so much.
And that's all the breakfast headlines. Now let's head back to Breakfast Central to continue with our top stories. I am Osagie Ogbon.
The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Tajuddin Abbas, has submitted a petition to the Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetokun, over recurring cases of gender-based violence in the country. This was as the Speaker led lawmakers on a solidarity walk with women and several groups in the country as part of the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. News Central's Emmanuel Bagudu was there and now reports.
A call for accountability and decisive actions to safeguard vulnerable groups. It's a 1,000-man march led by members of the Nigeria's House of Representatives as part of solidarity with women in the country and support for the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. The theme of this year's event is "There is no excuse for violence against women and girls." The demonstrators walked through major streets within the 3-armed zone and arrived at their destination, the Nigeria Police Force headquarters, where they submitted their petition to the Inspector General of Police.
Sometimes when the arrests are made, you know, the evidence is spoiled, the evidence is damaged, the evidence is missing. Sometimes when they get to court, nothing to show for it. So this is where we have come to appeal to the Inspector General of Police that he should help us pass it down to the grassroots of the police force, that henceforth any gender-based violence that gets to any police station across the country must be taken seriously. There are laws, and perpetrators that violate such laws must be brought to book.
This petition is a call to action, urging the Nigerian police force to take concrete steps to address this critical issue. We request that the police should increase the number of gender desks in police stations across the country to provide a safe and supportive environment for survivors of gender-based violence.
We are saying no to sexual harassment. We are saying no to gender-based violence. The rape, we are saying no.
The Parliament for the first time is going to be actively involved in the 16 days of activism. After today, tomorrow, there's going to be a sash demonstration in the chamber where members are going to wear an orange sash in solidarity with the women that have been abused all over Nigeria and all over the world at large.
The IGP accepted the petition with a pledge to act on the issues raised by the lawmakers.
The Nigerian police force has developed what we call gender-based gender policy, which integrates global framework into our policing practices. And we have remained committed to that policy till today. I want to assure you that we'll look at your petition and we will treat every point in the petition as expected.
The message has been delivered and all eyes are now on the Nigerian police as Nigerians look forward to a huge improvement in the fight against gender-based violence in Nigeria. In Abuja for News Central, I am Emmanuel Bagudu.
Emmanuel Bagudu, thank you very much for sharing that. Now, in case you do not know, the 25th of November up until the 10th of December, which is International Human Rights Day, culminates 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. And this is often marked by people wearing, like you saw in that video, orange and taking walks and making strong statements against gender-based violence. And you can, gender-based violence, and you can be a part of this as well. And all you can do is educating people about gender-based violence, consent, rape, you know, and what they need to do. And, you know, it was a very key point was raised there about the police's involvement and the role of the police in fighting gender-based violence. A number of victims or survivors of gender-based violence would tell you that when they went to the police to report, that rather than the focus being on the suspect or the person who committed this, it's always on the survivor, asking, why did you go there? What were you wearing? Yourself. Why didn't you run away? Or, you know, things like that that discourage survivors from oftentimes reporting to the police. And it's because a number of them are not adequately informed, and there's also the sociocultural impact that plays out when it comes to conversations about, you know, gender-based violence.
That report, you know, Kayode Betokun sharing his thoughts as well. Because like you've highlighted, it's important that the police understands the role that it should play, you know, and it's not, you know, up for argument. It's a role that, you know, the police should be aware of across the country. Situations where, you know, cases of gender-based violence are reported, you know, and the victim, you know, doesn't feel safe or feel protected. I mean, a couple of days ago, we saw the story of a young girl who was allegedly sexually assaulted in the police station. You know, there is, you know, situations like that. But, you know, the police must understand its role. But generally, as a society, we must understand the importance of highlighting these things every now and then. The risk that women and girls face in Nigeria, based on, you know, our societal understandings and reactions to gender-based violence, right, and cultural, religious, even traditional. Yes. Some of all these things, you know, contribute to the, you know, the increase in gender-based violence and the flawed reaction to it. You know, like you've also highlighted, it's not just rape; it's also violence at home, domestic violence at home, also in the office, in the marketplace. You know, almost everywhere that you see these things happen. We must have a complete change of understanding and reaction towards gender-based violence, right, in order to reduce those numbers. You know,
I mean, we'll keep talking about that. We have the next 16 days, even though it's a conversation that that goes beyond the 16 days. And but for the next 16 days, hopefully we'll bring guests to share with us on the show things that we need to know, conversations that need to be had, and stereotypes that need to be broken when it comes to conversations about gender-based violence, and the role that you should play as well when someone says to you that they've been raped. Your response should not be, well, what were you wearing or why were you there? But we will come back to that. Let's move on now to talk about Nigeria's economy. Nigeria's economy showed a positive trend in the third quarter of 2024, with the gross domestic product growing by 3.46% year-on-year in real terms. This growth surpassed the 2.54% recorded in Q3 2023 and the 3.19% achieved in Q2 2024. The services sector was the primary driver of this growth, expanding by 5.19% and contributing 53.58% to the aggregate GDP. The agriculture sector posted a modest growth of 1.14%, while the industry sector demonstrated a notable recovery with a growth rate of 2.18%.
Now, President Bola Tinubu has reassured Nigerians of a stronger economic outlook as the economy continues to expand. Following the release of the third quarter gross domestic product GDP report, Tinubu reaffirmed his administration's commitment to achieving a $1 trillion economy by 2030, stating that once the economy is rebased by early 2025. Now, we're going to be joined by our guest, who's the head of Open Government and Institutional
Partnerships and budgets,
yes, here in Nigeria.
We do have
he's going to be joining us in a bit.
Viola Tikwaga, who will be joining us.
Yep, and that comes up right after this very short break. So stay with us. Welcome once again, and now to get into conversations concerning Nigeria's GDP, as the government has, of course, stated, the NBS rather, stated that it has grown by 3.46%. We'll be x-raying exactly what that means, and if it has actually grown by 3.46% or grown to 3.46%, and also x-raying what exactly the level of growth is that we're seeing. We're joined this morning by Nameka Obiareri, who will be joining us in just a few minutes to express his thoughts on some of all of this. But this is what you have. GDP growth, it says the real GDP growth 3.46%, up from 2.54 in quarter 3 of 2023 and 3.19 in quarter 2 of 2024. Service, I'm going to come back to that, but services, it says also that it grew 5.19%, contributing 53.58% to GDP. And agriculture, and this is where the contributions basically, sector contributions. Agriculture, modest 1.14% growth, down from 1.30% growth in quarter 3 of 2023. And then in industry, it rebounded with a 2.18% growth, up from 0.46% in quarter 3 2023. In the oil sector, production rose to 1.47 million barrels per day, up from 1.45 million barrels per day in quarter 3 2023. And of course, in 2024, quarter 2, 1.41 million barrels per day. If you remember, the 2025 budget, I beg your pardon, is based on 1.4 million barrels per day as the oil sector production. It also grew 5.17% year-on-year, recovering from minus 0.85% quarter 3 2023. But one thing to highlight, and I'm going to come back to also the sector contributions, and I'm hoping that Nameka Obiareri will also be able to speak on this. One thing to highlight is, when the report was put out, it is stated, or it is announced, that the GDP grew 3.4 or 3.46%, and that would normally sound exciting. Especially when you see that it is up from 2.54% in 2023, quarter 3 of 2023. But if you look at the growth between quarter 2 of 2024 to quarter 3 of 2024, you can clearly see that what we are seeing here is a roughly 0.27% growth in GDP. It didn't grow to 3.46% as it is being described, or as the news headlines are taking it. It really just grew, or it just added 0.27% to it, from 3.19 to 3.46. It's just 0.27%. It's not necessarily such significant growth. And if you've also seen the reactions to these numbers, for many Nigerians, including the reactions to the NBS unemployment figures, which have also been put out. We're going to share that, in the course of the conversation. You would also see pretty much the same reactions that, in reality, to Nigerian businesses and Nigerian entrepreneurs and Nigerians who are dealing with the Nigerian economy every day, they don't necessarily see, the significance of this growth in everyday living and in everyday, business across the country. And that is something that, you can't necessarily argue with. Many people would say pretty much the same thing. It's not necessarily encouraged a lot more people to do business or change the reality of, doing business in Nigeria. And also with unemployment. But when we have those figures on your screen, I would share a little bit about that with regards to unemployment from the National Bureau of Statistics.
Right, and just to mention that the sectors that have contributed to the GDP growth are the agriculture, transport, education, health, real estate, finance and insurance, ICT, trade, and manufacturing. President Tinubu seems very excited about this. He's promised a $1 trillion economy by 2030 and has embraced this figure, saying that these figures have shown, that we're geared towards having that promised $1 trillion economy by 2030. He said that these are results of the, the policies that have been implemented, these policies that were initially criticized, the policies that have been made by his government that were initially criticized because of how seemingly harsh and maybe not premeditated they were, but that they're now starting to yield results. But let's now bring in...
just to mention that the former president made, the Buhari administration made pretty much, the same promises on GDP growth.
Well,
and GDP dropped from, or economy rather dropped from about $574 billion economy to 200 and something billion.
All right. Let's now bring in our guest this morning. We have Dr. Naimeka Obiariri joining us to look at what the implication of this is. Good morning, Mr. Obiariri. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, Olive. Thanks for having me.
All right, Dr. Obiariri, do you agree with these figures? And we've seen a lot of jubilation across board, maybe not across board, but the president, is very excited about this and says, he welcomes this number, stating that it's pushing us closer to the goal of a $1 trillion economy by 2030. Do you welcome these numbers? And are you excited by them?
Olive, numbers are numbers, but numbers must also reflect on facts and realities. Yes, the numbers look good, but does the numbers reflect on the reality on ground? And I think, I've read a lot of commentaries on this. We need to understand that basic economics is basic economics. And when we talk about GDP growth, what is GDP? Gross domestic product. And when we say GDP has increased, it just simply means that increase in productivity of goods and services in an economy from a period to period. And what are the factors that drive productivity? Basic economics. This is something you learn at the very entry level in the university. Factors that land, which is a critical factor of operation, naturally given. We have equipment and machineries, which is produced by man. Then we have capital, which is funds. And then we have the human capital, which is the most critical factor of production. Now, when you say there is increase in productivity, I'll give you an example, sector by sector. If, for example, you said, okay, in the agri sector, there is a massive increase, a shift from social level to social level. It must reflect not just in the volume of goods produced in that sector, but even on the prices, because simple law of demand and supply simply says when there is increase in productivity compared to demand, prices will come down and vice versa. If, for example, we have today a bag of rice is selling for last month, it sold for about 90,000, today is 106,000. It simply means one thing. The volume of productivity compared to the demand does not meet up with the demand. That simply means there is domestic supply deficit compared to the demand. If, on the other hand, it was 90,000 naira, of course, there are other factors that may even drive up those prices. And that simply means today we are producing about 5.3 million tons of rice, and we are consuming about 7.5 million tons of rice, which simply means our supply is less than our demand. And that is why price is good. If today we said, okay, how do we force down the price of rice in the market? Is to enhance productivity. and make sure that even the factors of production, things that input cost and everything, is done in such a way that we can actually produce 50 kg bag of rice and sell it at 50 naira, and everybody is profitable across the whole value chain. What it simply means that the factors of we have to increase the land bank. We have to do 1.52 million new hectares of rice farm to give us the paddy rice number that we need to parboil and meal. That simply means we need to increase more people that we employ in that sector. To man that 2 million hectares of land, we need to employ 2 million more people that will man one person per 1 hectare, or can employ 1 million, one person per 2 hectares. That simply means we have to increase the equipment and machinery that will be used to process the rice by way of either we are doing the cottage 10 ton per day capacity. That simply that means we have to increase volume of money, because we have to invest more money to be able to do this. To cultivate the land, to buy the machinery and everything. So by the time you aggregate all this increase in factors of production, that is how productivity is ramped up. And if you say the number has gone up by 3.5, by 4.5, it must now reflect actually in the life of the people. There will be more people employed in that sector. There will be more income and revenue in that sector. There will be more supply of those particular goods in that sector, and prices will normally come down. If it's on the services sector, for example, health sector, that simply means you have are there new doctors employed in the system? If new doctors are employed in the system, are there new revenues coming in terms of maybe people's processing powers have increased? Now they are going to hospitals to ensure that their healthcare services are taken. So these are practical things. It's not just a matter of conjuring up numbers or whatever. You know, the other day they said, okay, unemployment level is down 1.4%, and it shocks me. See, Olive, as I'm driving out of Banana Island now, at the gate of Banana Island, you will see crowd of thousands of people. I'm not talking about skilled laborers. I'm talking about unskilled laborers. I'm talking about young men and women who are lined up on the streets, waiting for who will call them in to come and do manual job, to mix cement, to carry block, and to do all manner of work. There, by 10 o'clock, by night, 7, 6, 7, 8, if you drive out, it's happening in Lekki, it's happening in Village, you will see thousands of youths lined up on that place. If we have so much number of unemployed, such low level of unemployment, what are those people doing on that street? These are jobless people looking for how they can eke out a living. I'm not even talking about those who are even skilled. The other day, it was announced Custom wants to employ 3,200 people. Over 500,000 applied. Police want to employ 10,000 people. Over 1 million employed. You check it. So if you have unemployment, I was in the US in 2017 when Donald Trump was the president, and the numbers were there. Somebody told me, one of my friends, that today, before, people there's a long queue of people who were unemployed. Today, you will see companies advertising for people to come and work. Nobody is coming up because people are already engaged somewhere else. Then my friend and my brother was telling me that under Donald Trump, he was telling me, I'm telling you things that happened within a space of 1 year, that they could see the numbers, because what he basically did was to attack companies leaving America to go to China, put tariff for them so that they can establish manufacturing business in America when it becomes expensive doing it in China. And the guy told me that the numbers are there. Before, people advertise for jobs and you see many people queuing up to be employed. Today, they advertise, nobody's applying. It's very practical thing. So when people talk about unemployment has gone down, productivity has gone up, it must be reflected.
Yeah,
if there is more productivity of a particular goods, the prices will come down. If for example, now I'm looking for 10 laborers to do a labor job in my farm, and I advertise, and there are 100 people looking for that 10 jobs. I'm in a strong position to bargain with them and bargain them cheaper than when I'm looking for 100 people and only 10 people showed up. They are in a better position to not tell me, okay, if you don't pay all this thing, we'll leave. So these things are not something you conjure up. It must reflect realistically on the everyday numbers, on the life and welfare of the people.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, some people would say that, yes, it must reflect, but, maybe not immediately. Over time, you would get to see it actually reflect, just like the president, Mr. President is saying that it's already reflecting, there's a lot of arguments against that. But, I don't know if we're also getting it wrong with the way that it is being reported, maybe by the NBS, saying that Nigeria's GDP grew by 3.46%. When you look at what the figures were in the second quarter of 2024, it simply moved from 3.19 to 3.46. And so I've seen the argument that what we are seeing here is simply a 0.27% growth. Am I correct with that? And is that something of significance? Or I mean, 0.27%, is that something to even mention?
Osagie, you're 100% correct. The numbers are not significant, but at least they are saying there's an inch up. Osagie, let me tell you, like I said, numbers don't lie in terms of inflation. I'll give you a practical example of things we've done in our private space. Osagie, last year, I run a group. I chair a group, one of the biggest agro group in the Southeast, the SEFAPCO, Southeast Farms and Agricultural Processing Company Limited. Something happened 2 years ago when the governor of Niger State banned the movement of tomato and pepper trucks. I don't know what happened. They said, okay, that they would not allow them to move to the south. And some of us felt so bad. And we said that we're going to invest massively in agric in the Southeast. And we created an audacious plan to build 18,090 greenhouse units with over $243 million. The plan is in every electoral ward in the Southeast to have 15 greenhouses. Each of them will be able to do about 250 kg of tomato and pepper every week. See, let me tell you something. Something we started a year ago. It's already reflecting in. Somebody told me, he said before, a kg of the bell pepper sells for 5,000. Before, a kg of the habanero was selling for 5,000. Today, we've practically crashed the price. We are selling at 3,000, 2,500, because we've put in so much supply glut in the market. I'll give you an example again. We've moved into the yam sector. A 10 kg of tuber of yam is selling for 8,000 naira. Osagie, go and market. By this time next year, the same kg of tuber yam will sell for 2,000 in the Southeast. It's a very simple thing. The yam consumption in the Southeast is about 185 million tubers every year, based on the very conservative GDP per capita consumption of 84 kg. What we are trying to do now is we are recruiting land banks. We already got about 100 hectares. First land, because we don't want herdsmen wahala. And what do we do? Our plan now is the first phase we are doing is about 5 million tubers. The cost of production, we have lined it up from production, from cultivation to storage to distribution. We come to about 8,800 for 10 kg. And we are creating massive retail shops to be able to bring this thing from business to the consumers. So basically what we want to do is over the next 1 year to produce more than 185 million tubers of yam through what we call the missions community, diaspora, private, public. And we're working massively with our diaspora brothers who are bringing their land that is gated and bringing in their fund, and we are producing it. This is how you drive productivity. What I expected the government to be, so at the local government and the state level, I expect the governors in the Southeast, and I've been preaching to them about this thing, and local government chairmen to create agro-industrial parks. If they give us agro-industrial park, we can mobilize diaspora investments. We can mobilize as much as $5 to $10 billion annually into the Southeast, but they must also provide security. So when you talk about productivity, when you talk about driving down the cost of price of goods, when you talk about driving down, these are practical things. You measure it. You measure, this is what I'm going to do. This will be the impact over time. For example, now, we are doing 6.3 million tons. We want to produce 15 million tons of rice to crash the price at a cost of not more than 50. We will scientifically know how many land are we going to invest in, how many people are we going to employ, what species of the rice species that we will use that will give us the right output. How do we store? How do we cut down the cost of logistics so that you can move it from Kebbi to Abuja at a cost that is not more than what it is today, about 5,000 naira per bag? Any government that is serious anywhere in the whole world, there is always a plan. When you plan, you measure it. When you measure it, the impact assessment is so seen in practical terms that you don't need to conjure up figures and numbers. These things are real. And the economic management is the simplest thing. It's the social science. It's the simplest thing anybody can do. The same thing with our crude oil. Over the last 9 years, we have been struggling. Output is 1.8. Later, any PRC will tell us it is 1.5. What does it take to ramp up output to about 2.5, 3 million barrels? We've done it before. We need to increase the rig count. We need to stop the theft. We need to meterize all our flow stations. There are practical things that have been done in other places. We can replicate the same thing here. We can't invent the way. But the problem we have in Nigeria, across the 3 tiers of government is that we are not ready to engage the right people with the right creativity, with the right discipline, with the right patriotism to do these things and then set KPIs. If people don't meet it, you ship them out. We are busy playing politics, celebrating marginal 0.25% increase. Does it make sense?
Are you saying, I mean, you said something whilst you were answering that there won't be need to, not the exact words, but to fabricate or doctor figures. You believe that these numbers have been conjured. I think that's the word that you use. You believe that these numbers have been conjured
if
up because
anybody tells you the unemployment position in Nigeria is 1.54%, it's conjured. You see, what I said to you, from the informal sector, from artisanal sector, only drive to Banana Island Gate every morning, go to VGC, go to Lake. You will see thousands of young men and women queuing up to see if they will be employed to come and do many jobs. If those guys are employed, they won't be milling up on the roads.
But is that just a function of the current realities that we have, or is that how it's always been? Because there are those who would argue that, I'm going to quote a certain Professor Ajibola. Professor Ajibola has said that he had talked about the difference between macroeconomic indices and the realities of Nigeria, stating that sometimes an improvement in GDP or in the numbers in macro indices is not necessarily or does not necessarily translate to an improvement in the quality of life of people, because there are certain other factors that come to play. So is this just a reflection of the current reality, or this is how it's been right from time?
I don't know the person you quoted, but I can bet a finger. If you look at most of these people that tell you that try to deceive Nigeria, there are those that benefited from Nigeria when Nigeria was good. Only look at Singapore, look at Nigeria. In 1965, Singapore was chased away from mainland Malaysia. They were assuming that Singapore was such a useless sand dune that they don't have any natural endowment, that very soon the ocean will carry them away. But something changed. They had a leader, Lee Kuan Yew, who had one-track mind. He said, I am not after democracy. I want things that work for my people. From 1965 to 1990, Singapore moved from a third world country to a first world country. Nigeria moved from a second world country. I don't even know if we're in third world country, if we're a fourth world country. And what were the practical things he did? First of all, he had zero tolerance for corruption. Everything in Singapore is based on merit. There's nothing like nepotism. Of course, there are multi-ethnic nationalities there. The Malayans, the Indians, the Chinese. Lee Kuan Yew made education the bedrock. They have some of the most efficient education system. In fact, GDP per capita in Singapore, they are the second best in the whole world. See, it must reflect. There was a time in this country, before people graduate from the university, the first job they will get, they will give them a cars. There was a time in this Nigeria, under Obafemi Awolowo, when we had 430,000 people under scholarship. Some of those who benefited are those who are really Nigerians. Some of them, they used to have half chicken for breakfast. Half chicken for breakfast and for lunch. Today, I wonder how many Nigerians that can even afford the leg of a chicken. So the truth is, what Singapore did, what China did. In 1980, China had over 769 million poor people. China in 1980 was worse than Nigeria. Today, China is competing with the rest of Europe and the West. China drove education. They moved their literacy level from 62 to 98%. China created the enabling environment for government-supported productivity and put in place the right programs and the right policy. They sent people out and they brought them back with knowledge. They were stealing technology from different places. The truth is, we are deceiving ourselves. There was a time in this country where you will not see people piling up on streets looking for many jobs to do. As people are coming out of university, they are getting jobs. And we can go back to that era. We need to go back to the physical federalism that worked then. Basically, what we have today is a Babiyala, Begali, Fidimpoto Republic. If we go back to the constitutional and physical framework that he was the chairman of 15th topmost corporation in Nigeria. He was a billionaire by all indices.
Well, we seem to be struggling with the connection there with Naemeka Obiariri, and of course, he's mostly sharing his thoughts on the latest Nigerian Bureau of Statistics report on Nigeria's GDP growth. Mr. Obiariri, kindly go ahead.
Okay, so in the First Republic, we had people that went to power based on merit. Sir Louis Odimegbojukwu was a parliamentarian. He was the wealthiest man in Africa then. He didn't go to parliament because he was looking for a job, or he wanted to go to parliament to begin to pursue contracts rather than do oversight function over the MDAs. He went there to bring his wealth of experience as an entrepreneur and to make laws that will add value to the people. That was why one day somebody encountered him in parliament. He carried his bag and he walked away. We had a young medical doctor, 39-year-old Michael Okpara, who was the premier of the old Eastern Nigeria. You understood what it means for you to solve a problem. You must first of all diagnose the problem. When you diagnose the problem, you discover the root cause of the problem before you apply solutions. The first thing Michael did was to recruit one of the biggest consultancy firms in America, who gave him a blueprint on how he can build long agro-industrial belts. And in 7 years, a 39-year-old medical doctor, who was an economist, created the fastest growing economy in the whole of the Commonwealth. He built 214-kilometer industrial belt over a period of 7 years without the fossil fuel revenue. That was the time when we had men who had brain, who were very patriotic, who were not in government to steal, just like Lee Kuan Yew. Today, basically what we have across the 3 tiers and arms of government are people I call rascals, people I call political bandits, who see political office as avenue to drink 40-year-old Glenfiddich, to wear Prada and other things, and to steal and loot. They see governance like a cost thing. Yeah. So if we want to fix Nigeria, for crying out loud, we need to first of all fix the foundation. You cannot build an 18-story building on the foundation of a rickety bungalow. We need to overhaul the constitutional and physical framework of Nigeria back to the 1960s constitution, so that each constituent unit and regions can look inward. Whatever they produce, they will give 50%, and they will pay tax to the center and the 20% to the federal government. When we do this, all this scramble for Abuja will reduce. People will now look inward to be productive. And when we are very productive, it will reflect in our Human Development Index.
Yeah, all right. Naemeka Obiariri, we would have to, continue to x-ray these figures and, of course, how relatable they are to the Nigerian business person and the Nigerian citizen as we go forward. And, of course, maybe also have the NBC explain further how we've, gotten these figures. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Thanks for joining us. And we wish you a brilliant day ahead.
Thank you very much.
All right. Now, stay with us this morning. We're going to go on a short break and share with you the major stories we've spoken about in the first half, and also let you know what's coming next. But that would be after this break.
Thank you for joining us this morning on Breakfast Central. Let's now share with you what the big stories making the headlines today are. And joining us this morning is the publisher of the niche newspaper, Ikechukwu Amechi. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Olive. How are you today?
Very well, thank you.
And also, how do you do?
Very well. Happy GDP.
Same to you. Actually, you do look like, you're coming from a country with a very happy GDP. All right, let's see what the papers are saying this morning on the front page of our first newspaper this morning, which is this Nigerian newspaper. Why we oppose rising cases of violence against women and girls. Reps Speaker Abbas petitions IGP leads colleagues on protest walk against GBV, gender-based violence. Federal government urges varsities to set up sexual assault referral units. FCTA approves 995 million naira for laptops in schools to prepare farm inputs for dry season farming. Demand notice on payment of C of O bills in FCT from pages 9 to 128. Chetima seeks adoption of tech-driven strategy to fight terrorism and others. Finally, Tinubu comments 3.46% Q3 GDP growth figure, saying it's pushing us closer to the $1 trillion economy in 2030. And, Mr. Ikechukwu Amechi is a pioneer of that. Let's move over to our next paper.
The Punch newspapers. Next, it says here, federal government plans more troops as sect spreads in north, and that's Lakrawa. Northwest states procure vehicles and others for troops. Sect spreads to north central. CDS plans more military bases. Customs seized 556 million naira contraband in Ogun State. Adeleke says, and of course with regards pensions, I have outperformed my predecessors. US-based Nigerians bagged 30-year jail for $3.5 million romance scam. And 2025 budget, 13 states commit 3.8 trillion to salaries and others. The FCC places Obaseki on watch list, probes contracts. States tackle NNPC over extra 1 trillion naira subsidy payment. We can also find here labor protests, NBS drop in unemployment rate report. Those are the major ones on the punch. You know, I mean, it may be shocking or sad, you know, to still hear that a terror group is reportedly growing or spreading in a country that, you know, has been fighting insurgency and terrorism for a decade or more.
Right.
All right. Our next paper this morning is the Daily Times newspapers. It says here, Nigeria's GDP grows 3.46% in Q3 2024, boosted by services sector. And also INEC counters PDP governors on rigging claims. Articles camp accuses Boala of betrayal for personal gain. FCTA approves over 900 million naira for digitization of educational system. And also Dilo Momodu exposes $23 million bribe in 2023 primaries. Vice President Chatima advocates tech-driven approach to tackle terrorism. And these are the stories that we can share. Let's bring in our guest, Ikechukwu Amechi, this morning. I think we'll probably start with the GDP numbers. It says it grew to 3.46%. But of course, you know, if you look at what Q2 was, you can see that 3.19 to 3.46%, I've repeatedly highlighted this, is a 0.27% growth between the two quarters. So I don't know if it's something to celebrate or something of significance to even mention.
Well, if it is true that the GDP grew by whatever percentage, I would say it is something to celebrate. But for me, the question is the GDP actually growing? Because, you know, the stats released by the National Bureau of Statistics says that it grew from 3.19 in the second quarter to 3.46 in the third quarter. And if you look at the sector by sector, they say that the most performing sectors, agriculture, transport, manufacturing. And you ask yourself, can this be true? Manufacturing, what is actually being manufactured in Nigeria that can push that sector to grow? In agriculture, like our Wora or whatever they call it, they are expanded, stopping farmers from going to their farms. So is agriculture really growing? What of transport? Is it the air transport that people can no longer afford airfares now to fly? Or is it even the land road transport? The roads are terribly bad. And so I don't know where and how they came about this statistics, but if it is true, Sunday Dare, the special advisor to the president on media and communications, said that the president is over the moon. If I were him, I will be. But the question is this statistics actually correct? If you ask me, I will say, look, no new industry that I can think of. There is no foreign investment that I can think of in the last 18 months or thereabouts since Bola Ahmed Tinubu became president. And that also, if you tie it back to what they said about unemployment rate falling, And you ask yourself, who is employing who? Where are Nigerians being employed? I don't get it. The industries that are here are moving out. And the implication is that as long as they are moving out, the energy cost, the devaluation of the naira, the exchange rate, is making it very, very difficult for even the little ones that are thriving here to remain in business. And we are saying that unemployment is dropping. I don't get it. I think the question that Nigerians ultimately ask, and I've asked that question many times on this platform, are you better off today than you were 18 months ago? I doubt if there's any Nigerian that can answer in the affirmative, that can say yes. So government can continue reeling out figures of the growth of the economy, of what they are doing and all that. It also goes back. Look, a lot of things happened yesterday. The three agencies, I think about 3 agencies, Federal Inland Revenue Services,
yep.
NNPC, and I think Customs went yesterday before the Senate, and they said that they have even exceeded the what they were supposed to generate in terms of revenue. And the question still arose. If we have more money now, because that is the implication of if the revenue generating agencies have exceeded their allocation, so it then means we have more money. Why is the government borrowing more? The Minister of Finance, Mr. Wale Edu's answer was neither here nor there. So there are a whole lot of contradictions. You say you are making more money, yet you are borrowing more. And we can't see anything in terms of infrastructure that should match the level of borrowing. And we are throwing generations of bonds from about 80-something trillion naira debt before Tinubu came into office. Now we've crossed the 100 trillion naira mark and still counting. It doesn't make sense. So they can reel out any figures that they want to reel out. If I were the president of this country right now and they tell me that despite all odds that the economy is growing, I would be happy. But the truth of the matter is that there is no Nigerian that is better off financially today than he was 18 months ago. And I don't know what improvement in the economy is all about if it does not reflect in the pockets of Nigerians.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully, you know, it may not reflect, you know, immediately the, you know, NBS drops its report. You know, it might reflect with time. Hopefully in the, you know, next quarter, Nigerians might start to see an improvement in their finances.
There's no improvement that we will see in the next quarter because also the exchange rate is still getting worse.
Yeah, it's probably 1,800 very soon.
Maybe by Christmas, it may hit 2,000. And the fuel price is not coming down, despite the fact that Dangote said he has reduced the S-Depot price from 990 to 970. Drive to the filling stations. We are still paying over 1,000 naira in every filling station in Lagos. And that's about the best we can get in the country. Transportation, those flying, right now you may not even get air tickets at 350,000 one-way trip to Owerri from Lagos. Those going by road, it is still the same thing. So nothing is going to get better in the next quarter. No new industries are being built. it then means that people are not going to be employed. If what they mean by unemployment dropping is that university graduates are now Okada riders all over the place, well, you say, yeah, we're making progress. But is that progress? My answer is no. So there's a whole lot of this economy is improving, we're getting there, blah, 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 with all the IMF recommendations that you are implementing to the hill. Is it getting any better for the average Nigerian? No. And until it gets better for the average Nigerian, all these things are sheer statistics.
Okay, let's move away from there and move to the Punch newspaper. On the front page of the Punch newspaper, we're seeing the different stories there. There's the unemployment one, but let's talk about Obaseki. EFCC places Obaseki on watch list, probes contracts. First of all, I think the first thing we saw was after Monday Okpewolo was sworn in, or just before he was sworn in, there were reports of Obaseki having quote-unquote fled Edo State. Yesterday, I put out a tweet asking, where is Obaseki? We don't seem to have heard from him in a long time. And now a 40-man panel was set up, as at yesterday's newspapers. A 40-man panel was set up by Okpewolo to investigate Obaseki. Now we're seeing that EFCC has placed Obaseki on watch list. Is this just business as usual?
It is. It is. It doesn't make sense. If Obaseki is there, he has not gone anywhere. If you find anything against him, take him to court. I'm not interested in EFCC drama. Let them say something else. If Obaseki has done anything that he should not have done, the courts are there. Let them take the evidence they have and charge him to court. All these media.
It's even if they will see Obaseki, because I don't know, according to last reports, we're not quite sure. Some people say he's in Lagos, some people say he's not in Edo State anymore. We really don't know where he is. But I guess in time we'll find out what the next steps are. But let's quickly also take the story. This one is on the Daily Times. Atiku's camp accuses Boala of betrayal for personal gain. They have dragged him left, right, and center. Do you agree with Atiku's camp, or is this just really politics at play here?
Look, I don't think Boala has acquitted himself well. No matter what you do, there must be some level of integrity in whatever you do. And I don't think that Daniel Boala has exhibited that level of integrity that should be expected of him. I don't want to believe that Daniel Boala is a political jobber, but what he has done seems to suggest that what matters to him is what comes to his pocket and not on any philosophical standing about what is right and what is wrong. You can't come out today and say Osa is a drug baron, Osa is a certificate forger, Osa is no good, Osa cannot do this. And next tomorrow, you say, no, Osa is the best thing that has happened to humanity, without telling us what happened to what you said yesterday. Even if you say that you said it because of now politics, it also does not speak good of you, because you can't just malign somebody's character because of political affiliation. So people must also be careful what they do, what they say, all in the name of politics, all in the name of trying to get attention, all in the name of whatever. Because there must be a high moral ground. It all boils down to values. There are so many people. Dr. Christopher Kolade continues telling me that the biggest problem we have in this country is the erosion, the devaluation of the moral standing, the values of the people. And until there is a value reorientation, until people begin to know what is right and what is wrong, and until people begin to appreciate that in life there are moral red lines you should not cross for whatever reason, whether it is for political reason, whether it is for economic reason, whether it is for anything, there are red lines in terms of morals, set of values that you should not cross, no matter what. You should even be able to say, look, even if it means paying the ultimate price, let it be, but I won't cross this. So when you see people like Daniel Bwala doing what they do, today you are with Bola Ahmed Tinubu and APC stalwart. Tomorrow you are an Atiku spokesperson disparaging everybody, talking down on everybody. And Atiku loses election, you went back to your vomit. No. Nigeria, see, Nigerians must begin to know what is wrong and what is right. It is our inability to differentiate between wrong and right that is perhaps keeping this country where it is today, because we have no shame.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know that is, I mean, the level of integrity that you speak of, I don't know that is common, amongst many of the people who are politicians in Nigeria, and of course, that includes their spokespersons, it includes the people around them. That level of integrity is not common. So it's not shocking. And I feel like what really should be highlighted is the part where Nigerians should already know that level of integrity should not be expected and should act accordingly, which is to ignore some of these people.
No. Osa, I disagree with you. Because if you say that Nigerians should know, of course, which is true, that level of integrity is not there, but we can move on, because that is why Nigeria is where it is today. Yeah. It is the inability of people to actually act on grounds of moral rectitude, on grounds of integrity. Look, politics need not be a dirty game. But even if we say it is, we should not make it worse.
Yeah.
Look, if a man does not have character, you can't expect that he becomes president tomorrow, that he becomes governor, and he will do wonders. He won't. If a man is a thief, you don't expect that when he becomes governor or president tomorrow, all of a sudden, he will change. It is this lack of moral rectitude that has put the country where it is today. And until we begin to address that and say, no, that these characters should not be, look, the greatest bane of our democracy is that the things that ordinarily should disqualify you, the things that disqualify people in other places, are the things that qualify you in Nigeria.
Yeah.
If you're not a criminal, you may not likely contest elections. Go and check those people who are in public office. How many of them are certificate fraud? How many of them forged their certificates? When you were in school, those people that were not attending classes, that were sorting themselves out, that perhaps did not even pass their distance, they are the people who graduate to enter into politics. And they're the people who govern you.
Yeah.
Whereas the people who were studying hard to make a first class and won't do the kind of things that these other people who were doing all manner of bad things are doing, don't end up in the leadership roles. And that is why Nigeria is where it is today. So I don't quite agree that because we know it is the reality, we should therefore overlook it and allow those people to continue doing what they are doing.
I agree with that. You know, and I mean, it also is telling, we need to go. It also is telling you that if the president can ignore that very glaring sign of, you know, lack of integrity and you know, hire that person to work for him, you know, I don't know that a lot of people would want to take, you know, a person who has clearly shown that lack of integrity seriously. But thank you very much, Ikechu Amechi, for joining us and for sharing your thoughts with us, as always. Very interesting and insightful perspectives on these issues. We look forward to having you again. Again, happy GDP.
Sir. And have a good day.
Thank you.
Well, should I say that may your GDP grow as much as Nigeria's?
Welcome back to Breakfast Central. Now let's share with you what Nigerians are saying. Now, David Adeleke, popularly known as Davido, the Afrobeat superstar, is trending for certain reasons. Now, whilst going on the podcast, the Big Homie's House podcast, he was asked what he would say to Nigerians living abroad who are considering a return home, and his response was, return where? It's not cool back home. The economy is in shambles. I do my part. I'm an ambassador. When I go home, I am filming. I am not going to show the bad parts. He then cites the exchange rate and oil prices to strengthen his position. And as you can imagine, this triggered a flurry of reactions online with those who have accused him of demarketing Nigeria. Now, while some have accused him of demarketing Nigeria and talking about his family being a part of the government and saying that if he's expecting that the government should do more, then his family is a part of the government, of course, with his uncle being a current governor. There are others who have stood up for him, citing examples and drawing parallels with President Tinubu speaking about Africa at the G20 summit in Brazil. Now, here's what President Tinubu had to say at the G20 summit in Brazil. He says, I'm from Nigeria. It's better to give you the true picture of what's going on. In Africa, we have terrorism challenges, insecurity challenges that is even preventing farmers from going to the farm. We have problems in Sudan, displacing people. We have problems of climate change, flooding, and we have problems of protectionism. We have problems. It is very important to make it clear and loud here. We have problems of out-of-school children. We have a problem of funding free education or giving our children 1 meal a day in a classroom to even make them pay attention to school. Now, as you can see, you know, there are those who have argued and asked if this really is not what the true position of demarketing Nigeria is. They're wondering if the president's statement is considered demarketing Nigeria, and saying that if you can consider Davido's statement to be demarketing Nigeria, then maybe you can consider the president's statement too to be demarketing Nigeria. The arguments have gone back and forth, some speaking for him, some speaking against him. But let's share with you what Nigerians are saying on X, and these are the tweets. Our first tweet this morning is from Inibehe Effiong. He says, Davido is entitled to his opinion about the state of affairs in Nigeria. In any event, he said the truth. Those attacking him are not serious people. Away from Inibehe Effiong, our next tweet is from Ohis, who says, my concern is, why is David's comments getting more reactions than what Tinubu told the world leaders at G20 summit? Nemeka Obiariri also tweeted about this and said, Davido is 1 million times more patriotic and adds so much positive values to Nigeria than 100% of the political and social media bandits who have largely or lamely attempted to rubbish his sincere submissions on the current state of the Nigerian economy. Our next tweet says, our people love to suffer and smile. I can still understand those working for or benefiting from the government. But what do you, ordinary citizens, have to say that makes you think Davido shouldn't have said that? So he should lie, right? Because you want foreign investors? The foreign investors who want to come here aren't fools, are they? Won't they do their homework before investing in a place? I just laugh when I read some of the things people say here. Well, Socrates has a different opinion. He says, both spoke on global platforms about Nigeria's challenges. Both are from our sister region, that is the West. Both spoke critically, yet the private citizen is accused of demarketing the country, not the one responsible for its governance. If this isn't witchcraft, then what is? Our next tweet is from Honorable Motosho, who says, Davido's father and uncle are players in the nation. What have they done to make the lives of Osun State's residents better? We also have another tweet from Rocketman, who says, okay, Davido has said what he said. Moving forward, the government should fix Nigeria so nobody will say such again. All this backing all over the place is not fixing the nation. The hardship is too much. And in response to all of this, the final tweet is Davido himself, when he put out a tweet saying, God bless Nigeria. Will that quell the angry people on social media? Will that make people calm down and see that, you know, he does does have the intention, the best intention of the country at heart? But let us know what your thoughts are. Do you think that Davido was out of order when he said what he said on the podcast? Or do you think that he probably, you know, was just being himself, and that's really the current representation of what the situation is? Let us know your tweets in the comment section under this video. And remember that the conversations continue at News Central TV on all social media platforms. We'll go on a quick break, and when we come back, more conversations continue. Stay with us.
The House of Representatives has been commended, I beg your pardon, for intervening in Nigeria's ongoing debate over genetically modified organism crops, GMO. The issue has divided stakeholders with concerns about health and environmental risks, clashing with arguments about food security and agricultural advancement.
Critics warn that GMOs may harm human health, disrupt ecosystems, and displace local crops. On the other hand, proponents like Professor Mustafa Abdullahi of the National Biotechnology Research and Development Agency highlight GMO's potential to boost yields, improve nutrition, and combat climate change. Though the Nigerian government has approved GMO crops such as BT cotton, GM soybeans, and pod borer-resistant cowpea, the House of Representatives has urged the federal government to suspend the commercialization of genetically modified organism crops in Nigeria. Joining us now is the president of National Ginger Association of Nigeria, Gagarin Madaki. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us, sir.
Good morning.
All right. Whilst we hear some... Good to have you, sir. There are different reactions to GMOs and the use of GMOs or the applause of GMOs in Nigeria. I want to find out where you stand. There are those who say that it's something to be worried about, especially with the fact that they've even linked it. There are those who have linked the consumption of GMOs to illnesses and diseases like cancer. But there are others who have said that it's good for climate change and several other issues, and even nutrition. But we'd like to find out what side you're on.
Yes, thank you very much. Now, genetically modified organisms, we have to look at it from both the positive and negative sides. Yes, do they increase productivity? Yes. Do they add better nutritional value? Yes. Do they are they pest resistant? Yes. So on the plus sides, they have this fact. But on the negative side is the issue of, and it's a multifaceted argument about this issue of cancer. And people will tell you that 90% of what they eat, soybeans and maize in the United States, 90% is argued to be GMO. So the question is that if it is that much, why is the whole of America not dying from cancer? So there are people who have arguments, and but on the negative side, I'll tell you this: the impact of the GMO on our soils is such that that is an argument as well. On the issue of cotton being introduced to Nigeria, I called the president of the cotton farmers, Anibe Atungu, who's a very good friend of mine, childhood friend, and I asked him, be honest with me. He said, frankly speaking, for cotton, it works for them. The only problem is the cost. And this is my argument about GMO. I'm thinking that if you are talking about cost, importation, then it brings us back to the traps, the entrapment that you have to keep buying from one particular company. And if you do not have the resources, you do not get the cotton. So what I can only advise for cotton only, you understand, is that we need to empower our own local institutes, IAR, and fund them to be able to provide our own local solution to genetically modified, so that we are not entrapped into or addicted to buying from a foreign GMO company. But on the other issues, I'm actually a bit confused. I can say I support it for GMO, but they'll tell you that GMO is too expensive to plant locally. But the yields, not undoubtedly, are higher. Nutrition is higher. The part on the soil, they have argued that that is argumentative, and I'll tell you why. They said that, well, this is what he's telling me, that he fixed it on the soil, and if you go and put a different seed that is not genetically modified, yes, it will affect the yield, but it is not something that he has not suffered it enough to tell me that after X number of years, he was not able to produce seeds. He doesn't know that fact, but he tested it, and he knows that it's more yield, it's better nutrition, it's better value, increases productivity, and it can reduce food security. So for me, until we can prove, because there are arguments for and against that it causes cancer. Now, when you look at the US, a big user of it, is it carcinogenic as they say it is? That's the question. I am more on the cost. I am more on the cost and the dependence on foreign companies from controlling your value chain through the seed. I'm thinking that we should localize that technology here, and then we can take it up from there.
Yeah, but I mean, what is the biggest concern for farmers? You know, and those who have been feeding the Nigerian households for, I mean, decades. What is the biggest concerns that they have with regards to this?
It will definitely affect the livelihood of politically correct peasant farmers or small-scale farmers, as they are called. It will definitely affect them the most. They're the ones that will be impacted the most. And Nigeria is being fed 90% of our food comes from that sector. So the truth is that it will affect more of that sector. We have not evolved to the point where we use mechanization, where we can guarantee that on mechanization alone, we have food security. And that's what we should do. And it's unfortunate, I was reading the other day about the fact that we have signed for these tractors, 10,000 tractors, which is still inadequate to be spread over the next 4 or 5 years. The first batch has still not come. And until we move to mechanization, we're not going to get lower cost of production, lower feed. And people keep saying that, no, but if you do that, you would ease the farmers out of work. And I said, no. What that does is that once you reduce your production, you have excess supply, it is cheaper, then it means we can export it. That's just my own common sense from it. But definitely GMO, based on the costs right now, based on dollar exchange right now, affects the livelihood of small-scale farmers. So we must find a way, our own local solution for it.
I want you to touch back again on the concerns that individuals have raised about the dangers of GMO on nutrition. And you would see people putting out tweets saying that a number of farm produce will stay much longer. Whilst on the face of it, you buy peppers or you buy grapes that are seedless, and you have them and they can stay for as long as a month or two and it's not yet bad. It looks like a good idea on the face of it, but there have been concerns that have been raised as to how healthy these are to consume. And, you know, are these fears founded? You know, do people have a reason to be afraid or worried about the impact of consuming these foods?
Well, you see, again, I'll tell you, the arguments have been multifaceted. I can tell you for sure that nutrition-wise, the GMO have been tweaked in a manner that it improves nutrition. No arguments there. And people will tell you that, well, that's artificial nutrition. The natural one is better. Okay, yes, maybe. But for me, I don't have enough evidence to talk about that carcinogen. But what I know for sure is cost. everything is cost, and we cannot be dependent on one seed supplier controlling our value chain. No. Because if you get to a point where the man will tell you that, all right, you do not sell this biting seed at the cost of your crude oil, or we ban your country from getting GMO seeds, you'll find yourself in trouble. This is happening to, I think, a country like Zambia, Zimbabwe, sorry, or Zambia, one of them, that is hooked, and the companies have just held it back as economic sabotage. So that, to me, is the danger, that you have to be reliant on somebody. I'm saying we should localize it here. That is progress. Now, on it being the nutritional fact, I don't have evidence for or against. So I would always stick to my argument that it is not commercially viable for us to continue to patronize foreign GMOs.
Yeah.
Let's localize it.
And you know, I think there's also, you know, a fear of regulation as well. Many people would also mention that Nigeria doesn't have proper regulatory frameworks to even control the excesses that these, foreign GMO companies might also bring into, you know, the Nigerian market. So there is that angle, that should be looked at. And, you know, the way that the Nigerian society and governance structure always works is that you find out that, the GMO gets into the market, the reliance on the Nigerian, agricultural sector dips, and then slowly, farmers are just kicked to the side. Nobody even cares about, the farmers and protecting farmers, protecting agriculture anymore. They currently have major struggles. So imagine what happens when we then have the GMO option. That's also something that, people would point out. But I want you to speak on the reason we're even having this conversation at all. Is there, a continuous struggle with Nigeria's agricultural sector that the Nigerian government has still failed to address? If we had a thriving, productive agricultural sector that can feed Nigeria, export, feed even neighboring countries, will we be having a conversation on, about GMOs at all? And, what more would you ask the current administration to assist farmers and the agricultural sector?
Well, you see, you have raised a very good point here, and I'll tell you this, that Nigeria is a signatory to the Maputo Accord, and the Maputo Accord states that you put at least 12% of your budget into agriculture. Now, what is Nigeria's budget in agriculture? 2%, 1%, 3%? If you can put 12% and cash back that 12%, you actually release that money, I think the sector would feel, even with the corruption, it would feel the impact of that. You can now increase productivity by making available more mechanization. With mechanization, there's better food security because you can produce far more. You can equally empower the small-scale farmers where they produce, but your cost of production actually is a lot cheaper. And once it's cheaper, you are sustaining the local food consumption. You are sustaining your own food consumption. The difference, you export it. It's just common sense. So government just has to come in ensuring that they mechanize and provide all the inputs required. Like the speaker I was watching earlier this morning was talking about the fact that if you do not invest in producing more yield for each crop, soybeans, maize, wheat, if you do not produce or invest in producing more, it's going to be more expensive, and you can't stop importation. And the only thing that will stop importation is to produce cheaper in Nigeria. And you can't produce cheaper if the investment is less. It's like a case of cart before the horse. So you have to do that to bring down the investment. That's just it.
All right. I guess we'll just have to wait out and see how things turn out with GMOs and the implication that will mean, that will have on Nigeria's agricultural sector. Thank you so much for your time with us this morning.
Thank you very much.
Speaking with us.
All right. That's all that we have for you today. Thank you so much for joining us on today's broadcast. Remember that you can continue the conversation with us on social media at News Central TV on all platforms. Also, to mention that a number of our interviews that we have here on Breakfast Central, if you've missed them, we have them uploaded on YouTube. Please do well to catch up with them. We'll be back again tomorrow, if God wills. My name is Olive Emodi. Thank you for your time with us.
And I am Osagie Ogbawa. See you tomorrow.